right? So the universe, the earth, the world, your body, everything is part of a dynamic system that's constantly righting itself to try to get back into harmony.
If your body is vibrating at a very low vibration, you're eating terrible food, you're hanging with people who are not positive or inspirational, you're consuming just negative media all the time, your view of the world is that we're all going to die tomorrow and I'll just eat here now because there's nothing else I can do, and life is over.
Whether that's self-compassion, love from others, love from the universe, I call it the love pyramid, self-love, social love, spiritual love, that's going to help us actually self-regulate. It's going to help us become more self-aware.
The thing is, it's a lot harder to do, to be honest.
It's only, I think it just requires some training. I don't know about being hard. I think it's a skill.
So it's almost like we're like basically self-sabotaging and keep like hurting our wounds like continually, and they just get worse. If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246, and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned, because we have some more great content coming soon. Hello, beautiful and amazing people. Welcome back to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I am your host, Todd Cave. And today we welcome first-time guest Dr. Eva Selhub. And Dr. Eva Selhub is an internationally recognized resilience expert, physician, author, executive coach, keynote speaker, and spiritual advisor. With almost 3 decades of experience, she previously held roles as an Instructor of Medicine at Harvard Medical School and as a clinical associate at the prestigious Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital, where she also served as medical director for 6 years. Dr. Selhub also served as an adjunct scientist of neuroscience at John Muir USDA Human Nutrition Research Center on Aging at Tufts University, one of 6 nutritional research centers supported by the United States Department of Agriculture. She has authored 6 books: Burnout for Dummies, Resilience for Dummies, Your Health Destiny, the Stress Management Handbook, The Love Response, and the co-author of Your Brain on Nature. She has been featured in esteemed publications like the New York Times, authored multiple scientific publications, and has been showcased on national and international platforms. Now, this conversation is a very interesting conversation, considering the times that we're in, where in 2025 we're about to receive a lot of stress from our overlords. And I think that a conversation like this is very merited, because we're going to have to learn to be resilient. And the 6 pillars of resilience that Dr. Eva Selhub discusses in this conversation, I think will add great value to our journey in how to overcome what is to come.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster and then learn how to control it.
You got to be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why it is really hard to really crack the matrix, because there's so many levels and layers to it, So Dr. Eva, welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you today, especially since we had that conversation off camera. I'm really keen to talk to you today. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So can you tell the people a little bit about more about yourself and how you got into coaching, and also where people can find you should they be interested in this conversation that we're about to have?
Okay, well, so I started out as a medical doctor. I still am a medical doctor, but I started out in practice. But to rewind, my journey started in 1996. I was a resident at a major city hospital, and I was exposed to HIV through a needle stick exposure. And at that time in 1996, people were dying, horrible deaths from HIV. And there was a study that was released from the NIH about giving people a whole, like 14 different pills a day for 6 weeks to prevent conversion to HIV. So that's sort of when my big kind of, I guess, trauma really woke me up, because for 6 weeks I took medication. For 6 weeks I cried. For 6 weeks I was sick. For 6 weeks I thought I was going to die a horrible death, not be able to work, that no one was going to love me. I had terrible coping skills, and I just cried all the time. I was sick, and I, had a very hard time functioning. And at the same time, I also did my bargaining, and I said, if there is a God, if there is one, I don't know, but if there is one, please let me live. I promise you I'll be a better person. I'll work harder, be kinder, and I will take care of all the needy. I'll just go into service, I promise. And so after 6 weeks went by, and my blood test did not convert to HIV, I said, okay, I'm going to live up to my part of the bargain. I'm going to go and work harder, be nicer, be kinder, take care of everyone who needs to be taken care of. And as I was progressing to go down this route, my dog died, my grandfather died, my medical license was being questioned because somebody I didn't know was writing letters to the medical board that I had to take to court for harassment. And then my apartment burned down, and I lost everything and didn't have renter's insurance. Then my father had a heart attack. He survived, but by that point I was completely out. I mean, it was 5 months of one thing after the other. And every time, I would pull myself up from one trauma and I would put up a smiley face and get ready to go, I'd get knocked down again and again and again and again. And after 5 months, I just said, I'm done. And I just didn't want to live. I didn't want to be here. I was tired. I kept saying, why me? I don't get this. I'm doing everything. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to. Why am I being punished? Why is this happening to me? I don't want to be here. It's too hard. I'm too tired. And that went on for about 5 months. And then, again, I've told this story so many times and I still haven't figured out what happened. But a friend took me out to dinner and she said, we miss you. You haven't been the same since the needle stick. We want you back. And I kind of woke up out of my darkness and I just started having these realizations. I thought to myself, you've been walking around saying, why me? You're asking the wrong question. The real question isn't why me, it's why not me. Nature just as soon lets a forest fire burn as a flower bloom. It's not personal. This isn't personal. Yes, you've been hit with one thing after another, but it's not because of you. It's because it's what happened. And you can either feel victim to life or you could be a co-creator to life. You can think that life happens to you and sometimes even for you, but it's really happening with you. And what's going on with you that you've turned it into a victim state? Like, what is it within you that doesn't have the love and the self-worth within you to be able to cope with these situations and taking it personally? And that's when I decided that I needed to learn more. I needed to learn more about the mind-body-spirit connection. And I started working at the Mind-Body Medical Institute at Harvard and soon became their medical director. And so I was doing both my medical life and medical directing of bringing the mind-body interventions, which is, psychological work, meditation, spirituality, nutrition, exercise, like all the different types of things that we can do with self-care to enhance the healing process. So I did that. I had a practice for 5 years. And then I left that practice to go pursue some alternative healing modalities while still doing the mind-body medicine things, and started then creating my own practice where I was merging Eastern and Western healing practices with coaching my patients and how to heal themselves. Because what I didn't like was the medical model, which is you going to a doctor and the doctor fixes you, which is really a bunch of BS because nobody fixes you, you fix yourself. And that what the Western medicine does is give you a Band-Aid so that you stop bleeding. But the reality is how do I get empowered so that my body's natural ability to heal itself can be activated. So that's what I did from 2002 until 2019. I had a clinical practice where I merged all modalities to support the healing process for every individual. And then that really was becoming more of a coaching practice. I also felt like I wanted to have a bigger impact on humanity rather than one person at a time. Where do people spend most of their time? At work. Let's get into the workplace to create a cultures of care, work with leadership so they can support their employees. So that's kind of where I moved to in about 2017, working with a coaching practice. I closed my clinical practice down and essentially working with individuals to support them to become resilient and to become more self-aware, to be able to hone in on the love within themselves and the love that they're able to then impact the world with and become the highest and most flourishing versions of themselves, whatever that may be, but either professionally or personally. So during this time, I've written 6 books, and so you can find them on pretty much any bookstore platform, Amazon or Barnes Noble or what have you. And I have different programs that I've done that are on my website, and meditations that are all on YouTube. So you can find pretty much everything that I've done on my website at drselhub.com and across all the social media channels.
Okay, so you are a resilience expert. So can you break down exactly what that means?
Absolutely. So for those of you who aren't aware, resilience is really, the term just means being able to bounce back into original form after a challenge or adversity or stress. And so the idea here is that every human being, every living organism is to a certain extent resilient. We're all resilient. It's hard work getting to where we are today. That all of us have had challenges, adversity that have knocked us down, and we've all gotten back up. That makes you resilient. So you want to think about resilience as a bell-shaped curve, so that you have sort of the middle ground, and then you have these two ends. So on one end, you've got you keep getting knocked down, you get back up. You keep getting knocked down, you get back up. At some point, you run out of gas and you just collapse, and that would be either burnout or illness. And the other end is like athletes, where you go through stress and you get stronger and better, which we call hormesis or flourishing. So you get better. So that adversity is either going to knock you out or it's going to make you stronger, or you're somewhere in the middle. Most people are actually over here in the middle to the sickness part, on the verge of burnout, as opposed to where people are who are flourishing and stronger, better as they age, that sort of thing. And so all of this is going to be related to how any individual is able to navigate stress. And stress is not a bad term. Stress is just a term of physics. It's a term of life, because every living organism, including the universe and the earth itself, is always trying to find that place of harmony. We call that homeostasis, that place of balance. And so because we're dynamic, moving, constantly shifting beings in a shifting universe and shifting earth, it's not going to stay in harmony all the time. It's going to have imbalances, like you're going to get hungry and you're going to get tired and you're going to be uncomfortable when you're sitting. And so what happens is that everything will then try to right itself to get back into harmony. So if you're hungry, you're going to eat. And if you're cold, you're going to put on something warm. And if you're uncomfortable, you're going to shift positions, right? So the universe, the earth, the world, your body, everything is part of a dynamic system that's constantly righting itself to try to get back into harmony. And so when the brain is giving the sensory signals from the body that there's something that's out of balance or stress, it'll try to motivate an action to correct the imbalance. And we call that adaptive coping, that it finds a way to adapt to the problem and coping with it appropriately so the system can get back into harmony. In science, we call that allostasis, which is the ability to achieve stability through change, the ability to get into harmony by changing. So that's how life exists. That's what we're doing constantly. The problem is that if we're not fully aware of what the problem is, like anxiety, and we're trying to cope with the anxiety, but we're not actually dealing with the reason we're anxious, we're just trying to get by, then we're going to cope, but not maybe adaptively. So adaptive coping example is I'm hungry and I eat. Okay. Maladaptive coping would be I'm anxious and I eat. So the eating is comforting, It's actually turning my stress response off, giving me some neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, but it's not actually solving the reason I'm stressed to begin with. The reason I'm anxious to begin with is not being addressed. So that is going to stay hidden in the body and provoking that stress response. And when the stress response is activated, it leads to physiological changes driven by adrenaline, cortisol, the stress hormones, like an increased heart rate, muscle tension, poor digestion, shutting down of the brain and being able to think clearly, dropping down of neurotransmitters so that we can stay in a negative mood. So basically every physical problem you can imagine is a result of that stress response being out of balance, including the connection with the gut and the brain and what's happening in the gut and how, the microbiome that's in the gut. So everything is really interconnected. Your emotions, your spiritual beliefs, your physical activities, what you eat, it's all connected, that whether or not this system is going to feel like it's in harmony or not as it navigates the world. And so there are stressors that you know about and stresses that you don't know about, and the stresses that you don't know about that aren't being taken care of are activating that response, which is putting pressure on the system, which is affecting your ability to bounce back when adversity happens. So you can think about, when you go through your day and you have challenges, let's say at work or in your personal life, and how you deal with it when you're sleep deprived and when you're fully rested. You deal with it very differently. Your ability to cope changes depending on how harmonious your system is to begin with. So the ability to really cultivate resilience, which is what I teach people, is through cultivating these different parameters, these different factors that affect our ability to be able to see our world as manageable versus unimaginable, to be able to be self-aware, to be connected to our response, to be able to regulate our nervous system so that we can then cope effectively, logically, practically, whatever that may be.
Okay, very interesting. So then tell us how understanding resilience actually impacts on our health.
Well, resilience is your health. Okay, so when you are in optimal health, you are resilient. And I mean health mentally, physically, spiritually. To me, health isn't just your blood pressure. That's a Western way of looking at your health. For me, it's health is how is your life? How are you performing in your life? Right? How are you interacting in your relationships? How are you feeling about yourself? How are you sleeping? How are you interacting with the environment? How is your work performance? How is your life satisfaction? What's your happiness scale? So that to me so health to me is life. Medicine is life. It's not separate. So you're living in a world that isn't just about your physical body. It's about everything. And your physical body is a reflection of everything. So when you're not fueling yourself, like you have a car, you have a Porsche and you're putting vegetable oil in the car, it's not going to perform very well. And you're not taking it in for maintenance, and you're not checking the tires, and you're not keeping it clean, and whatever it needs to function well, it's eventually going to not function well. Our bodies aren't any different. We have these magical vessels that are high-engine vessels, and our brain even more so, that when not fueled appropriately with love and care and nurturance, they're not going to fare very well. And then, if your car is not doing well, you can't make the drive in life.
This is very true. And the thing is that, like, on my channel and when I'm doing like my own podcast where people are interviewing me, and even when I'm talking to guests, I always stress that your actual health is multi-leveled. It is the information you consume, it is the friends that you keep, it is the food that you eat, it is the places that you go, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people that if you want to change your life, one of the best places to start is to get into shape.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am a physical trainer, but while obviously one can say that I am biased in that respect, I do see it all the time with all of my clients that when they start to get into shape, it affects their mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Because in order to get into shape, you have to have an improved mindset. And this is why I focus with my clients on improving their mindset and creating habits. Because the thing is that to get into shape is actually easy, but the hard part is actually having the discipline and the consistency, which come from the mindset. So if your mindset is poor, you have poor discipline, poor consistency, zero results. And then when you end up having a transformation, it means then that you had a different mindset. And what tends to happen by I guess naturally is that you start to connect to your spirit, because the mind and the body start to form this link where you start to open up different parts of yourself. But you're not going to be able to connect to your spirit if your body is vibrating at a very low vibration. You're eating terrible food. You're hanging with people who are not positive or inspirational. You're consuming just negative media all the time. Your view of the world is that we're all going to die tomorrow, and I'll just eat here now because there's nothing else I can do, and life is over. So I look at it from a different side, because I see my take is the physical part, but I guess if you describe that, what I was just saying is all about resilience then, because I'm talking about holistic health and you're talking about holistic health, but just from a slightly different side. It's almost like we have one coin and I'm saying it from one side and you're saying it from the next side, but we're actually saying the same thing.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, the physical body, I come from physical medicine, not psychiatric medicine. So as opposed to a mental health practitioner, I come from a physical medicine practice, and because you are in a physical body. So I come up, my way of teaching cultivation of resilience is based on six pillars. And the first pillar is physical vitality. For me, that's the very first pillar. If you were talking to a psychologist, they would talk about mindset first, mindset and emotions. But for me, the number one pillar is physical vitality. The reason being is because you're in a physical body. And when the physical body is ill, it's going to affect your ability to have mental mindset and all these other things. And it's about nourishing this vessel, nourishing it in the best possible way. And what does that mean? That means, moving the body. And we know that with exercise, the exercise reduces stress response reactivity. It raises serotonin and dopamine levels, even as, higher or better than medication. It also gives you a sense of agency and a sense of believing in yourself and more confidence. There's all kinds. I've done a lot of things actually for iFit. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're like Peloton, but for Nordic track. And I've done some of their training on movement and mood and how important it is. And I was a L1 CrossFit trainer. So, it's really important for us to step into our body and to own this body and say, I am here and I choose to be here. And to understand that self-discipline isn't something negative. Self-discipline is about love. Because when you say this is something I should do, then people don't do it. They don't exercise and they don't put nutrient-rich food into their body, and they don't get adequate sleep, and they don't do what's necessary for this physical vessel to truly thrive. So that's a state of love. So one of the things when I'm working with people on the fitness aspect of things, it's about seeing this as a loving act. It's not like, because people look at self-discipline as something sort of hard and, I need to suffer, and it's not. It's if I truly love this body and I loved myself, I would want it to thrive in what actually feels good. And that's sort of changing that mindset. And so the second pillar is about that mindset. It's about being able to look at things as opportunity versus limiting, to be checking our beliefs around shoulding or coulding, to be able to look at something as, oh, this is conflict, it's bad. No, conflict is opportunity. And to be able to just look at our failures, our setbacks, whatever's going on with us as opportunities for growth, for healing, for embetterment. So that's pillar number 2. Pillar number 3 is our emotional equilibrium. That understanding that when we're in a negative emotional state, it's going to trigger that stress response, going to take us to our 5-year-old self, not our adult self. And how do we then, manage and navigate emotional intelligence, being able to recognize and honor emotions, but be able to step outside of them and use them as a compass to then guide us through things. All of this is taking in a mindfulness practice and being present and learning how to self-regulate that emotional response so that I can then be the more harmonious, balanced version of myself, if that's possible. What allows us to do that is the love and care that we receive from our community, from others. So the 4th pillar is about relationships, of being able to have, as you said, the right people within our midst who support us to thrive, who remind us, who mirror to us our wonder and our beauty and our gifts, so that we can then be, again, the best versions of ourselves out in the world and have the best possible impact. The fifth one is another thing you mentioned, which is about our spiritual connection. So it's our need to be connected, but to need it to be connected to something greater than our meaning, our purpose, our ability to then, go forward out in the world. And what kind of impact do I want my gifts to have in the world, as opposed to, being sort of closed in about me, which brings us to the sixth pillar, which again is in alignment with that, is recognizing my impact as a leader in my own right in the world. What sort of impact do I have? Understanding that we all impact everybody else with our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our reactions. We're not isolated beings, and to take ownership, agency, responsibility for that, of what my internal being is and how that affects the outside. And then I have ownership and agency to change that within myself and be able to get back to the world.
I find it so cool that you just took everything you said and just wrapped it up in a very, I would say, in a better way than I said, but it's basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when I was preparing for this interview yesterday, I was looking at, all of the stuff you talk about and you into, and I was like, wow, this is going to be a very interesting conversation, because a lot of the things that you talk about, I talk about, but full disclosure, I'm not actually medically trained. I just talk about because of my personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
I have done a bunch of psychedelics. I have had some very traumatic experiences in my life. I have had a few mentors that have taught me the stuff that I know, and I've read a bunch of books, and I just merge it all together. And I just love physical exercise, so I became a coach. And I just find it quite remarkable to hear you as a professional are basically saying the same thing I'm saying, but at a much higher level, which it just goes to show you that, there are a lot of teachers in the world, but just sometimes slightly different perspective can be necessary for other people, because the people that follow me have an ability now to hear the same things I'm saying, but from a slightly different side, that may also be able to touch, move, and inspire them to actually do some work on themselves, because I'm very big into self-development. And I find that the only way, I always say, because I look at things from a very spiritual level, that the road is long, hard, and it's internal. And it's a matter of trying to get that internal space to be the place that is safe, loving, compassionate, forgiving, and all those things. And it's very interesting that you said you start with the physical body, which is where I always tell people, well, you want to level up your life, you want to feel better about yourself, get into shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because of my physical experience, my personal journey, where I was in a very deep, dark place. And the only thing that allowed me to cope was starting to exercise again and to read a bunch of books.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm with you. I did the same thing.
And is kind of like, and I find that every person that I talk to that speak like us all have a very similar story. There was an extremely there was either an extremely traumatic experience or experiences together that pushed them to the deepest, darkest parts of their mind and themselves. And then through, I don't know, guess, serendipity, the universe, spirit, God, whatever word you want to use, we just like found something, we just trusted, and we just ran with it. And then we ended up coming through the tunnel, and now we talk about these things. So thank you very much for sharing that. It resonates with me very much.
I'm so happy.
And I find that it's very interesting that, people, like, for me, I'm not trained like you, but I'm able to understand the things that you talk about,
Yeah, but look, a lot of the stuff I came up with was not because I learned it from somewhere. So I'm not different from you. No, nobody taught me this stuff. This is stuff
Yeah.
I learned because of my own hardship. And when in our hardship, we're desperate to feel better. And so, yeah, nothing I talk about. When I wrote my first book, which was called The Love Response, and came out in 2009, which is more relevant today than it was back then. So I encourage people to buy it because you need it. It was based on my own personal experience, my experience with, and then taking that experience and then giving it to my patients and their reaction to what I had come up with, and then validating it with the research. So I would then research the research to find validation for why something was working. So I'd over close to 300 references of finding whoa, why did that work? Oh, well, why did that work? So I backed it up with the science, but it was all evidence based on my own personal experience and the clinical experience of my patients. And then I was able to see patterns. So the beauty of this is that I discovered when I first started lecturing on it, and then I sat in on some other lectures, and we were all saying very similar things. And that's when I was able to recognize that this isn't my stuff. This is universal information that we can all tap into in our way. And if we're lucky, we can find ways to then teach it to others if we're so gifted to be able to do that. So none of this is new. None of this any of us came up with. For me, very little of it was taught. And I think it's a beautiful thing that we are able to download this information from the stars, from the universe, and then be able to with the gifts that we've been given, be able to impact others in a meaningful way, whichever way that is.
Yes, I'm starting to realize that it's all about teaching others and helping others. And this is where you get a lot of growth, a lot of joy, and a lot of happiness. So, what are some of the practical tools for cultivating resilience in our daily lives?
Well, let's start with, let me just start with, there's sort of the steps, the steps of understanding of where we want to go in general, and then we can look at sort of more details. But in general, the first, we want to cultivate self-awareness. So you're a physical body living in a physical world. And like I said, the way you navigate this world is by being able to pay attention to your nervous system or the stress response. But the first thing is to cultivate self-awareness. What am I feeling at any given moment? Am I feeling tired? Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling happy? Is my chest contracted? Is my breath going fast? Whatever that may be. And start becoming aware of your physical sensations, your physical presence, as well as how things feel in the body. So that's a mindfulness practice we call self-awareness. And there's different depths to that. So that's one thing. So becoming self-aware of how I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing in any given moment in time, to be present, be fully present. 2 is self-regulation. So knowing that if the system wants to be in harmony, what is disharmony to me? What does it feel like to be in harmony? What does it feel like to be in disharmony? So learning skills to self-regulate the nervous system, to bring the nervous system back into safety mode or harmony mode. So that's 2. Those are the skills we want to learn, whether that's exercise, breathing techniques, mindfulness meditation, a vagal nerve stimulation, whatever that may be, that support my nervous system to go back into harmony, back into safety mode. Because once my system is back in harmony and safety mode, then I can actually reappraise what's happening in my world, use my logic, use practical advice, reach out to people, do my due diligence. It's just very difficult to do when you're in stress response mode. But before we get into this place of reappraisal, we want to also recognize that in order to bring that nervous system into safety mode, most likely you're going to require some love, whether that's self-compassion, love from others, love from the universe. I call it the love pyramid: self-love, social love, spiritual love. That's going to help us actually self-regulate. It's going to help us become more self-aware, and then it's going to help us inform how we reappraise and what choices we then make to take care of ourselves, which I call the infrastructure. So then when we get into the infrastructure, that means what is it that I can do in my life that can support me to be in harmony, to support me to thrive? Exercise, nutrient-rich food. So what am I doing to move my body? What am I doing that I enjoy, that I'm more likely to then continue? Who are my buddies? What's my support system? It's very difficult to stay on track if you don't have a support system to do it. Just really challenging. Same thing with nutrient-rich eating, with food. Becoming aware of how things feel when I eat them. What is my mood when I eat them? What are the different things I can do to amplify my nutrition so that I can be at my top best, and who can support me to stay that way? Again, it's very difficult to uphold positive behavior patterns when the people around you aren't partaking. Very challenging. They will sabotage you because they won't be able to relate to you anymore. So you want to find your people, find the community of people to support you. So that's also a tool that's really important, is starting to work on your relationships. Who's supporting me? Who's draining me? Right? Who's uplifting? Who's not? And what's important to me? And how do I take care of that? So we want to look at our sleep hygiene. How am I sleeping? How often am I unplugged? What's my screen time? These are all part of that sort of physical vitality, developing a meditation practice. What am I doing for fun? How often am I playing? What am I doing for laughter? What's my passion? What am I doing to pursue passions? What am I doing that helps me pursue purpose and meaning? So those are sort of the different questions that we want to ask ourselves when we're building an infrastructure to support us to thrive.
Yes, so basically what you were describing is what I call your diet, because I think your diet is multi-leveled. And I always even talk about meditation, because I always say, well, you have your part mind, because I always say on my show that we are a mind body spirit complex, and it's like a stool. I always say it's like a stool with 3 legs, and if one of those legs falls, then the whole stool falls down. And basically meditation is very a big part of like my coaching. Like, I actually give my clients meditations to do. I give them guided meditations. I put them as habits for them to do daily. And it's so it's so like, I don't know if the word is serendipity, or basically because I find that these are the things that work in my life. I give them to my clients, and it also works. And they have like improvements in how they feel, and they get good results, because it basically is you're creating a new belief system, right? Because I'm a very big fan of Joe Dispenza's work, and he always talks about creating new neurons in the brain. And the only way you do that is by creating new habits, because neurons that fire together wire together, and where you put your focus is where you put your attention. So I've kind of like amalgamated all of those things in what I do, which is pretty cool to hear you say these things as well. So let us talk about, how does the mind-body connection play a role in overcoming adversity?
Well, I mean, like, to define what does it mean to overcome adversity, right? Most people overcome adversity. The question is, do you come out of it broken or whole? Okay.
That's a very, very good distinction to make. If you come out of it broken or whole. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So resilience is about being able to bounce back into original form after meeting adversity. Okay. So the ability to be able to come out of a difficulty, of an adverse situation, and continue to thrive because of that situation, not even despite it, but because of it, is going to require that you do cultivate all those pillars, right? It's going to be working on your belief system, how you view yourself, how you view situations, which isn't easy to do because we've been programmed from the day we were born to believe a certain way. So it's going to take some deep spiritual, psychospiritual work to work on some of those belief systems and how we see ourselves in our world. It's going to mean making sure that we're taking care of our physical health so that we can actually do that type of work. And it's also going to mean that we have the right people in our midst who can hold space or match our nervous system. So, this idea of having a like-spirited person with you who can mirror that nervous system for you, because a lot of this is repatterning and reprogramming experiences that we had as children when we didn't feel safe, when we didn't have that love that really held space for us to then be able to regulate, to have people around us that can help us feel safe and help us be able to then regulate our nervous system into a place of harmony and safety. So having the right people in your life is also very important for that. So a resilient person is not alone. A resilient person is part of a resilient community. So our ability to overcome adversity and come out whole is also going to be dependent on the people that we're surrounded by, our belief system, our connection to something greater than, our ability to make meaning from the situation, and our ability to continue taking really good care of ourselves.
Okay, so basically, it's almost like what my mate says, you have to find your tribe, because and there's the thing, like I always say to people, like when you're going to start to get into shape, you will lose some friends, you will lose some connections, because if they are accustomed to going to the bar on the evening and you're going to the gym, what's going to happen is that as you're starting to get into shape, that behavior is not going to resonate with you anymore.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Or it will be considerably reduced. So instead of going to the bar 3 times a week, it may just be once a week, right? And that may be on your off day. But then even again, because alcohol is basically poison, alcohol does nothing for the body. When you start to go to the bar and you see that all your progress is just like being obliterated a couple of days later because you had all those dead carbs, then you're going to have that conversation with yourself, like, well, is this actually really worth it? And then you can be like, well, most people that are honest with themselves are going to be like, no, it's not really worth it. So you will end up losing friends. So you will have to get a new set of friends that will be, instead of going to the bar, they'll go and have healthy food to eat, because you can find restaurants where you can get clean food. But, if you have some friends that are similar to you, then no one's drinking beers and all that kind of stuff. They're probably drinking sparkling water,
Mm-hmm.
So you will feel more comfortable to be able to do that and lessen the pressure.
Yeah, and I would add to that and revise that a little bit to take out the negativity or the fear. I think worrying about calories and that all the hard work you just obliterated with calories is sort of a blame shame game, which I don't think works in the long run. I think it works in the short term, but in the long term, you want to do things that support you to feel really good within yourself, and about your world. And, for me, going to bars, loud bars where, I just don't enjoy myself. I feel tired. I don't like how I feel the next day. I'm overwhelmed. I need like 2 days of recovery afterwards. Something that I might have done when I was younger, like exhausts me now. So I just don't enjoy it. So the point is here is not so much shame and blame about something, but are you really and truly enjoying yourself? And how do you feel the next day? Is it really worth it? If I know that like, okay, I'm going to eat a bunch of junk food one day and I'm just going to enjoy myself because I'm with like, this is a fun thing, that's fine. And then I'm going to suffer for a couple of days later, but I'm prepared for that. It's okay. I'll bounce back because I don't actually like it. So to get to a point where you choose to do things that you actually like, and not because you like it because it's numbing, but you like it because it's supporting you to thrive and it feels so good. I've lost a lot of friends because they think I'm snooty or snobby. I don't look down on what they're doing. I love that they're enjoying themselves. I just don't love doing the same things. If they want to go for a walk with me or go out in nature, or go and have some tea or something, I'd be happy to see them. But I don't like going out at night at bars or loud places. I just don't enjoy myself. I'm tired and then it messes me up the next day. So it's not that I'm saying, oh, I'm going to mess up my calories or mess up my exercise. I'm unhappy. I'm happier when I do the things I love to do. And when people want to join me doing those things, that's great. How wonderful. So it's just changing that locus of sort of how you go about doing things to one that's coming from deep within your heart, from a place of love for yourself. I love myself so much that I want to get more sleep and I don't want to be up until 2:00 in the morning. Right. So I don't like feeling tired. I don't like how it affects my performance at the gym. Right. For me, it was like when I was really doing CrossFit more religiously, I was like, well, it's affecting my ability to perform. And then I start realizing like, well, my performance is every day. It's not just at the gym. It's everyday performance. It affects my ability to think clearly. It affects my ability to sit with my clients and be fully present. It affects my food choices because when I'm sleep deprived, I my hormones get messed up and then I crave foods that are comforting versus nurturing. So it's like seeing what is going to support me to feel good about myself and make choices that are going to support me to thrive. And, everyone's going to be different around that.
That's a very interesting take on it because I guess, to be fair, if you really coming from a place of self-love, if you're really honest with yourself as you're getting into shape, your habits will change. So because if you're not consuming loads of junk food, when you do eat junk food, you feel it.
That's right. Exactly.
You feel heavy. And if you're not drinking a lot and then you go and drink, like you rightly said, you feel it for like a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, okay, I can, that resonates with me where it's just a slight change of vocabulary where it's like, I actually don't like to feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that my performance is low.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that I have like a splitting headache the next day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that I'm feeling bloated. Okay.
Right.
I
It's
can,
more motivating. You're more likely to stay on track.
I can run with that.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Okay, so we know that stress is bad, right? But how can you break it down exactly? How does it affect the body?
It's not bad.
Mind?
It's not bad.
Oh, is it really?
No. I said that in the beginning. Stress is just a term of physics. It's just saying that it's like saying hunger is bad or being cold is bad. It's a fact. Stress happens, and without it, you'd be dead. Without stress, you would have no motivation to do anything because you'd be dead, because only dead people don't have stress. Stress is when there's an imbalance in the system, and the system then has to correct itself in order to survive, in order to adapt. So, having to shift positions is the stress is discomfort. So the issue isn't so much stress, it's whether or not that stress is manageable or not, or whether or not the stress has been managed, whether the system is able to correct itself or not with this, given the stress. So like a stress that would be detrimental would be, let's say, you've lost your job and now you can't pay your rent. That's a real stress. Okay. Now how you approach that stress can affect you physiologically. Okay. Now saying that that's bad, well, I don't know what the universe has in store for me, because maybe if I hadn't lost my job, I wouldn't have gone and studied psychology and done what I've always wanted to do in my life. I would have stayed at this dead end job. I mean, again, so we don't know like whether something's good or bad. So I stay away from that terminology. Stress is stress. The question is whether or not I perceive that it's manageable and what I do with it. How do I approach it? What's my mindset when it comes to that stress? Is it something that I'm going to manage? I'm going to find a way to right myself? Or is it something that I'm going to let control me? So it's about learning how to use stress to your advantage.
Okay, so very interesting. So basically, is then is a shift in mindset for every single situation. So I guess is instead of looking at everything as bad, you're just looking at everything as either a lesson, a tool, a platform, an opportunity to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, at a high level, you're saying, okay, this thing is happening to me, or this thing happened. Okay, let's see how we can benefit from it.
Well, again, you don't have to like it. It's not necessarily, you're not saying it's good or it's bad. It just is, right? It's snowing outside. That's not good or bad. It's just snowing. Do I like it or do I not like it? And what am I going to do about it? Like I can stay inside. I can go outside. I can go out naked. I could put on something warm. I have agency of how I'm going to now respond to the fact that it's snowing outside. Okay. But the fact that it's snowing outside, I can't do anything about. It's neither good nor bad. It's just snowing outside. Whether or not I like it or not is something otherwise. So I don't necessarily like it, but then I can say, okay, given what is, what can I do? Given what is, what's in my power to do? What are my options? Where's my opportunity? So it might take a while because you might feel upset about it. So that means what? We do some emotional regulation so I can get to a place where I can be more in alignment and then figure out what I can do given what is.
Okay, so how then, like, when these things are happening or have happened to you, how is it then that you teach your clients to be able to manage their emotions? Because from what I have learned, there are two things that are really important. Well, your thoughts and your feelings are your two greatest creative powers, right? And Saint Germain says that your thoughts only become real when they're clothed in feelings. So I would like to understand how then are you able to, how do you teach your clients to be able to manage those emotions? Or I don't know if that's the right word, because the way I try to do it for myself personally is like, okay, I'm feeling this emotion, but this emotion does not define who I am and where I'm going. It is happening to me. So the technique I do is I take a step back and I try to be the observer of my feelings. So if I'm sad, I can be say, okay, I am sad at the moment. This is happening to me. This doesn't define me. But then, okay, I would try to self-analyze myself being sad in terms of like, okay, well, there's something that I can learn, or is there an opportunity for me to change or to improve on? Um, what are some of the things you teach your clients specifically in how, like, when they're having really emotional things happen to them, that they're able to handle it and deal with that situation?
Okay, well, first a few corrections. The first correction is nothing's happening to you. Okay, nothing's happening to you, it's just happening. You happen to be there as it's happening. Okay? It's like the tree isn't happening to me, the tree is there. The snow isn't happening to me, the snow is there. You know, when people say, oh, that person cheated on me, they didn't cheat on you, they cheated. You happen to be in the relationship when they cheated, but they cheated. So when you say something happened to me, you become a victim. You don't then have agency and ownership of that situation and the co-creation of what can happen next and what has happened prior. So you're not a victim. And so emotions don't happen to you, you have them, just like you have thoughts. You are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you have them. They're the way your body expresses that it's out of balance, just like you have hunger. Okay? You have cold. All right? They're not who you are, doesn't define you. It's a way your body's letting you know you're out of balance is through your negative emotional or positive emotional state. Your thoughts are based on junk. They're not about anything that's happening now. They're observations that then take you out of an experience to talk about something. So their thoughts are projecting into a future that hasn't happened or processing a past that has already passed if they're not about the present moment. So exactly what you were saying and how we manage emotions is by being in the present moment and feeling what we're feeling. And to be able to step outside of those feelings, about the emotions, by observing them, by saying, I am noticing that I feel anxious and I'm noticing I feel a pit in my stomach. So by starting to observe, we start stepping outside of everything. And we start, rather than being in the drama, we're like now observing it. We're the spectators. So now we can say, okay, well, why am I having this emotion? Where is it coming from? What is it related to? What is it reminding me of? What's the story here? What's the belief system connected to it? Is it true? Is it logical? Where did it come from? Oh, yeah, that's the same, story I had in my childhood or whatever. And now we have the opportunity to heal, to grow from it, to use it as an opportunity to navigate. Or, I'm feeling this emotion, and it expresses itself as a tightness in my chest. Okay, well, let me just hold space for the tightness in my chest. Let me breathe in and allow the tightness in my chest to be there. And so then it starts moving and expanding. And now all of a sudden there's no tightness in the chest. And now the emotion is gone. So it's a mindfulness practice that allows us to be fully present with what we're experiencing without judgment. Give it absolute space to be there. It'll eventually pass, what then allows us to be back in that place of balance so that we can then use our brain to discern what needs to happen next.
Okay. Songs, you think it's a lot harder to do, to be honest.
It's only I think it just requires some training. I don't know about being hard. I think it's a skill. And that's why people like us exist, to teach people the skills. I say this often, if people knew how to do this, I wouldn't have a job. So, many of us wouldn't have jobs. And so it's something that can be learned, and it's not difficult to learn. It's just a skill set that we didn't learn growing up. right? We didn't learn that our emotions were just things, signals that the body was sending out to let us know that we needed care.
I guess it's just almost like they say disease is a dis-ease. So the body is in an uneasy state. So
That's
you have
right.
to dis-ease it. You bring it back into ease.
That's right. That's harmony.
Right.
That's exactly right. It's about bringing the system back into ease.
Okay. So you talk about something called the shield.
Mm-hmm.
So to help manage stress, and can you tell us a little bit about what is the shield?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, there's the self-awareness, nervous system regulation or self-regulation, self-love or connecting with love, and then being able to reappraise. And the way we do that is by first having to slow down or take a pause, right? You're caught up in something and you're noticing like, oh, I'm stressed or whatever that is. And you're going to just want to take a pause. So the shield S stands for slow down. Let's just slow down for a minute. H, so it's a mnemonic and it's a visualization and a healing all in one. And it's actually available. The meditation is available on YouTube for anyone who's interested. It's a free meditation. And it's also the major technique that I use with all my clients, but was labeled in the love response, and talk all about it and how it's used and how best to use it, that sort of thing. So slow down, honor the way you feel. So that's the self-awareness. What am I feeling? Honor it. Non-judgmental awareness of how I'm feeling. That's the mindfulness practice of really being in observation and appreciation of how I'm feeling right now. To honor that it's not bad. If I'm feeling contraction or feeling scared, I'm not going to push it away. I'm going to honor it, let it be there. I is to start doing that regulation, the nervous system regulation, that creating the ease through breathing. So inhale and don't forget to exhale, I-E. As we start quieting the system, we can start listening, doing the observation. Why is this here? Why am I feeling this way? Where did it come from? Is it true? Is it logical? What's the belief system? In what way is this triggering me to feel like I'm not enough? And then D is our decision. So as we're calming the system down and getting to a place of quiet and safety, now I can reappraise and make a decision to choose to be the victor in my life rather than a victim. And that's when I give people this affirmation: I am enough, I have enough, I have all that I need, come back, I have all that I need. Now, as you're doing that, the beginning of this mnemonic, this visualization, starts with calling out for help, calling out for the shield. As I mentioned before, it's difficult to get into a place of safety and regulation when we're alone, when we feel alone. And recognizing that in myself, I said, well, what would I need to feel supported? It actually was funny how I came up with this, because I was driving, and Boston tends to be a really crazy place to drive. We've got really crazy drivers, and a driver cut me off in traffic, and I had to swerve, and this was an old man, and he flipped me the bird. And I was so outraged and incensed and hurt. And also my heart rate was going 1,000 miles an hour because I had to swerve out of the way. And I was so mad, and I was screaming expletives. And then, of course, I felt really guilty that I was swearing. And because, I'm supposed to be this spiritual teacher who's got such a foul mouth. And, I thought to myself, gosh, the Dalai Lama would never talk like this. And, berating myself. And then I started laughing because I was like, well, the Dalai Lama has a driver. So he would never even be in this situation because the Dalai Lama has a driver, which then said to me, okay, well, there's a couple of things here. One is, I wish I had a driver, right? I wish I had somebody protecting me so I would not have to worry about this stuff. And B is, I'm shaming myself for being upset, for being angry. But the truth of the matter is, I had every right to feel angry. So I have to honor that feeling. I have to honor that emotion. It's that emotion that actually supported me to swerve out of the way and take action. It helps us take action when something is wrong. I said, so I'm going to honor that emotion. And, what else do I need? I need to feel safe. I need to feel loved. I need to feel like it's okay. So that type of support is really necessary. And also to understand that if I react so strongly to something, it's because it's triggering something old. Okay, that's important. So if you have a strong emotional response to something, it's because that situation is triggering an old memory. So if I were to scratch you on your arm, it might be annoying. But if I scratch you on your arm and you have a big, ugly ulcer there, you're going to scream high holy murder. So we react strongly to something. We have a strong emotional response to something because there's an underlying ulcer. There's a previous experience, a trauma, a belief system that is getting triggered. So it's what it's doing is it's giving us an opportunity to heal it when it comes up, right? I wouldn't know that there's a leak in my bathtub until I put water in it. So when you're in a situation that caused you to have a huge emotional response, it's a wonderful opportunity to heal something old from your past. So that's how that came up. And so that when you're calling out for a shield, it's a visualization of this beautiful golden light that's coming down and showering you in light and filling you with light as you're repeating this affirmation, healing your body, healing your heart, and getting into a place of ease and harmony.
So I guess that when they say that when something triggers you, you're triggered because it is disrupting an old wound.
That's right.
Mm.
Otherwise, it wouldn't trigger you. Otherwise, it wouldn't trigger you. If you don't Eleanor Roosevelt once said, nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. So you had to have learned it somewhere in order for it to come up for you.
That is very, very interesting. So I'm assuming then that in relationships, when couples break down, one or both parties have been quotation marks triggered because of their past belief systems, fears, traumas, and stuff, where I guess one party just shuts down, and that shutting down may not even necessarily come from you 100%, maybe a 10%, but it's because it was an old wound that triggers the behavior to just shut down, don't communicate, don't speak, and disappear.
Yeah. If that's their coping mechanism, then yes. Everybody has their own coping mechanisms that they've come up with to protect themselves. So we all shut off to a certain extent because we're not even aware that we're doing it. It's how we've protected ourselves over a lifetime.
Yeah, you're right. We are not really taught these things in school at all. We're not. And this is why I tell people that I find that schools are just like public indoctrination camps, because you come out of a school and you're more or less like a robot. You're not really taught how to think. You're not taught like these life skills. Like, I mean, I wish I had a class when I was in primary school to teach me how, like, your thoughts and feelings are what create your reality, and you have the ability to change that reality based from just a small change in thoughts and healing some of the things that were painful. But we're not taught these as children. I mean,
well, how could they be taught to us if our parents don't know? And the people before them, and so on and so forth. That's why we're changing that in this generation.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think I'm almost is like, it's mad, right? I just had like a really crazy thought. I think like the new form of teaching children would probably to be introducing them to podcasts and stuff like this, because it is almost like you get more benefit from hearing conversations like this than you actually get spending 8 or 10 hours sat at a desk and just regurgitating information, because you're not taught how to process. Because like in relationships, we have two strangers that are going to get to know each other. They're both bringing their fears and traumas and stories, and then it's like they're trying to get their fears, traumas, and stories to match. And then because there's this harmony in terms of like, one party does another thing and then the other party reacts, and then it just starts a circle of arguing and non-communication and this and the next. And it's really a situation where, like you rightly said, it comes from our childhood. We're not taught how to manage stress, because we're not taught how to like look at things as opportunities. We're just taught now to be like, especially now with the advent of social media, is about instant gratification. And if you don't get it, well, screw that person, just leave, go and find another, and then you have the same outcome. So screw that person, go and get another one. And it's almost like we have this vicious cycle of just continuing. And all we're doing is we're just making that wound that was in the beginning worse. Because like you rightly said, if you have an ulcer there, you scratch it, you're gonna shout for blue murder. So it's almost like we're like basically self-sabotaging and keep like hurting our wounds like continually. And they just get worse. Wow. So one of the things that I have seen in others and also in myself, to be fair, is that when circumstances change in our lives, we find it difficult to handle. So how do you do you have like any tips that we can use to embrace change and like turn actual setbacks into comebacks?
Well, first of all, have that intention first, right? I think that's really important to set that intention and saying that I'm going to do my very best, even though it might be difficult, to approach my setbacks and failures as comebacks. And just first set that intention, knowing that it's not going to be easy to move into that mindset right away. Because it isn't easy. When something hurts, it hurts. And when, there is a certain amount of grief or anger or fear, those are necessary. So I encourage you first to set that intention that that's what you'd like to be able to do. And that go through the steps of pausing, honoring the way you feel, building your self-awareness abilities, building your self-regulation abilities, and building your self-love abilities. As you do that, the being able to be in that place of mindful awareness, intention, and love, self-compassion, you're going to be able to then access that part of your brain that is capable of looking at everything as opportunity. But it's a process because it's important that we feel grief. It's important that we feel pain. It's important that we feel fear. It's important that we feel all these things because they inform us of what needs happening next. So the key is to be able to use those emotions to guide us, to be able to connect with our value system as a compass. And so there's a process to go through of learning how to navigate your emotions, how to navigate situations so that you have access to this intention.
So basically, it starts with the intention to want to do it. So would this be kind of akin to the 5 stages of grief, where like you have denial, the anger, bargaining, the depression, and then the acceptance? Is that
absolutely
akin to it?
So whatever the process is, it's a process. Like sometimes it's going to be a situation where you can go, oh well, it's an opportunity and you're really going to be able to flip it. I would just encourage you not to expedite that process, not to push it forward to say, oh, I have to be able to look at it. If you're feeling downtrodden and you're feeling like a failure and you're feeling just be able, to be able to do a mindful practice with that, to be able to step outside of it and to be able to see it as your little self who's feeling hurt and alone and scared that needs to be witnessed. Because otherwise we start splitting ourselves into this like higher adult rational self, and then there's small self that's feeling scared and wounded and hurt. And the goal is to be able to integrate all of that to be a whole being. So to be able to just witness that I am feeling this way, these are feelings that I'm having, it's not me. So the first step is non-identification with the emotions and the feelings. So if you're feeling anger and you're feeling grief and you're feeling fatigue or you're feeling depressed, recognize that you're feeling these things. That's not who you are, and not to identify with them, and to know that it's a process that you're moving through that will get you to the other end. That's why the intention is important.
I think that's very helpful because I find like how we deal with disappointments, relationship breakdowns, passing of loved ones, losing jobs, stuff like that. I find that the you said it's a process, right? To actually come back from that, and is challenging because there is a part where you would have to have that initial emotion of maybe anger or grief or sadness and stuff, and I think I guess you have to have it, right? You have to let it happen, but the thing is now is that there's a little bit of a nuance to it where you let it happen, but the intention is not to stay there, because I find that in us, in a lot of us, we tend to stay in that place all the time for a long period of time, or longer than we should, because it's almost like Lao Tzu said, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. So it's like the pain that you're gonna feel, you can't do anything about it. You can't change it. You're having the pain because maybe you fall and hurt your hand, or I mean you lose your job, okay, or someone dies. But is the key is not to stay there. So it's like how then like, or is it just something that self tells you where it's like, okay, this is enough grieving, or this is enough to feel angry, and it's time to move on? It's like how how can people like understand like how long that process is supposed to be? Because I find like people that are depressed like for long periods of time, it's almost like they drag it on and they get stuck, right? So like,
Well,
how do they get unstuck?
first of all, there's no time frame. Number one, there's no time frame to a personal process. It's going to be what it is. One. Two is that you aren't your emotion. And so you want to not identify with it. So that's already going to expedite it when you don't, you're saying, I'm having this feeling. It's not I am this feeling. I'm having this feeling. Right? So identifying with it is going to be hard to actually let it go. But the first thing is there's no timeline. It goes when it goes. You're ready when you're ready. The third thing is that it's very challenging to try to do it on your own. And I do recommend getting help if you're not something that you can move through easily. But is getting a book, listening to a podcast, getting a therapist, a coach, whatever that is, a person who can help you witness this and teach you how to move through it over and over and over again until such time you can do it on your own. Because, like I said, it's something to be said about somebody who can be there to witness this for you and mirror the nervous system safety for you so that then you can move through it. It's not a natural thing. It's not something that you learned how to do, so you have to learn it. And so it's like you're doing your physical fitness. You think somebody could just, deadlift 200 pounds off the bat just because they said so, and how long that's going to take? You should be able to deadlift within a week. You would say that to everybody. So there's no timeline. There's no how. You're not your deadlift. It's not going to determine your value and how much you deadlift. The form is the most important. That we don't get hurt, and being really self-aware of our form so that if we're better at our form, then we can lift more in the end. So there's no rushing that, but it does require often somebody who can support us in the process and give us the tips and tools and support and mirroring of being able to get through it.
Yeah, I concur, because I never really looked at it like that, because obviously because I'm a coach, like a fitness coach, you're right. You have to get someone to teach you how to do these things, and is mad because we don't really actually look at getting a coach to help us with our emotional self and how to heal. We tend to like self medicate. Whether it's through drugs, drink, or porn, or something like that, right? And we end up just creating this vicious cycle. But it's kind of interesting that like you said it, because I don't think a lot of people, it actually like the penny doesn't drop for many people, whereas like I actually need to get a coach to teach me how to overcome how this thing I'm going through, because like you said, I am not my feelings. I have these feelings, but even to make that distinction, you have to be taught to even speak like that, because it's like abracadabra, I create as I speak. So if you speak like that, then you become that. You become that awareness, like, hey, I am not this feeling. I'm just having it. And there's like a lot of detachment there without even realizing. So I guess one of the important things for it is the detachment from the feelings, because I guess my technique for myself is I tend to try to like observe it as the observer, right? So I allow the feeling to happen, but I do my best not to identify it as me. But I guess a really good thing to put in the vocabulary is like, I am just having this experience. That probably gives greater or just as great of a detachment from it. And is very interesting because in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about attachments. And Krishna says that the biggest threat or the biggest challenge to humanity is their association with attachments. And Krishna tells Arjuna that the only way to get victory is to become able to completely detach from everything physical. And he said to him in this particular story, he said, "You see that lump of gold?" He says, "You need to be able to view that lump of gold as you would a normal rock." And what that means is that a normal rock, you can throw away that rock with any sort of feeling or attachment to it. He says, when you are able to take a piece of gold and throw it away and just have no attachment to it, basically this is how you're going to liberate yourself. So that's even looking at it from another side as well. Because this is why you always say that attachments, I think, are the biggest existential threat to man, because attachments basically are what cause self-sabotage.
Well, it's your attachment to this reality. It's what you perceive as reality.
Yes, very much so. So basically all of these things like come from our fears and traumas. So like, how then do we heal our fears and traumas? Because, for example, I tell people that we need to heal for them, but how then do we actually do that?
You take the steps that are necessary for you. I think we've spelled it out throughout this podcast, and it's all in my books and many other books out there, that you start with the path that's right for you, and you start with self-compassion and self-love. That's the first step, is, being able to be present for yourself. So that would be, what can I do to love myself more? And who can I putting into my life that could love me more? And what are the different activities I could do that would love me more, that would support me in that way? And as you do that, you're going to already start reprogramming old belief systems and traumas. And then you get the support that you need through therapists, counselors, healers, ministers, priests, whoever, that you feel that are connected enough to you to be able to help you move through some of the deeper stuff.
So basically, one of the things, you need to get a coach, you need to get a mentor, you
can do whatever works for you. I never use the word need. People are ready to do what they're ready for when they're ready, and meet the right, when the student needs, the teacher will appear, right? Or when the teacher is ready, the student appears, or I can't remember which one that is. So, but again, the point is when people are ready, the right person will appear that will support them through that period of their life. And it's not necessarily always going to be the same person through each period of your life. And it's important to have an inquiry, a desire for inquiry, a desire for growth, a desire for freedom, to be freed up from our attachment to this reality that we think is all there is. We get caught up in this thing that this is, time, and this has to be this way, and I need to be successful, and I need to have all these things. And these are what create that notion of enslavement to this reality, when there is just so much more out there. There's so many infinite possibilities that are possible, that literally this desire to be free of that. And as long as you have that desire, the right things will come along to support you to do that. And there's plenty of reading material, YouTubes, CDs, movies, all kinds of stuff, literature that one can start with to start that journey.
I think though that one of the things is like, some people can end up just getting stuck.
Well, that's when you get somebody to help you. If you feel stuck, then that's what we're here for.
And what they do is they stay basically just in that part of like, not taking action, basically, right? You get so caught up in this. Okay, well, I can be doing reading, and I can listen to podcasts and that kind of stuff, but they're actually not physically taking action. So then now, how can we sort of like, align our our actions so that we have a purpose-driven life?
I'm just going to keep repeating myself. Because when you do the process, the mindful, loving awareness practice of taking the time out to be present with the way you feel, to self-regulate, to do it with love and compassion, that's going to allow you to then connect with something greater than, and allow you to then, that spiritual connection is very important. Whether you seek spiritual connection, you go out in nature, you connect with a spiritual group, or you just have some type of practice that helps you align with something greater than. And then you start asking yourself not so much what your purpose is, but what is going to bring, or what's the meaning of life. You can say, well, what is going to bring meaning into my life? How can I bring more purpose into my life? How can I share my gifts with the world? And so just doing that type of inquiry and sharing, that inquiry with yourself and then with others, it's going to enliven, your state of being. It's going to enliven how you walk around in the world, and you will find more purpose. You will find more meaning just by asking, how can I bring more meaning into my life? How can I bring more purpose into my life? How can I find ways to share my gifts with the world? Those kind of questions are then going to inform the rest.
It's very interesting that you use the word how 3 times, because one of my shaman, he says that if you really want to figure yourself out or figure out situations, you ask yourself how and what. How can I get that done? What do I need to do to change this situation?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very interesting. Those are 2 powerful words for introspection. So, Dr. Eva, it has been absolutely awesome talking to you today, and you've really shared some great knowledge with us. So, can you tell my audience how they can find you, what services you offer, and all that kind of good stuff?
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love these types of conversations. You can find a lot of stuff on my website, drselhub.com. It is getting revamped, so we'll see what happens by the time you're listening to this. Hopefully it'll be up and running in the right way, but there's lots of blogs, lots of articles. There's some online programs that I think are available still. You can find me across all the social media channels. We're constantly posting good content. We're actually growing a YouTube channel soon. That should be starting sometime in December this week. And I do a lot of coaching, a lot with executives, a lot with companies. I work with companies to improve their culture, and I do a lot of advisory work. And I am often doing a workshop or a seminar that you can come and join. So there'll be a bunch happening in 2025 for sure. So you can keep in touch. You can, again, follow my socials, and I'll be posting all the different types of workshops and seminars and programs that I'll be doing going forward.
Awesome. All the links to where you can find her will be in the show notes of this podcast. And as you know, guys, I'm an online fitness trainer. I help spiritually inclined people burn fat and build muscle. So if you would like to get into the best shape of your life, improve your mindset, grow spiritually, hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 and send me a message and just say, Todd, want to get into shape, etc., etc. And guys, that I also help you to connect with magic mushrooms, because on the Conscious Man 7, we believe in increasing your consciousness. And one of the ways to do that is to help with psychedelics. And so if you're interested in any magic mushrooms, again, hit me up on any of my socials at Adriano_246 or on Instagram, or Todd Cave on Facebook. And if you would like to support this podcast, you can also visit our merch store. The store is on Amazon. It's called Todd and Me. And you can get one of these type of shirts here. It's my logo, and that would help support the podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. Dr. Eva, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I really enjoyed this conversation. And keep listening to this podcast, folks, because we have some more interesting guests coming soon. Speak to you soon. Ciao and namaste.